You know, the mass unit for Drajeweled is actually my least look forward to mass unit that was introduced alongside the other mass unit, but alas, it is my most concerning evolve form of the current decks that I own, as well as, you know, what Drajeweled Masques actually does. Still, after going through several times of what Drajeweled Masques is doing, this might be the most solid one. This video is sponsored by Phoenix Pharos cards. If you need supplies of singles or splits for Cardfight Vanguard, especially the ones in the video, do check out Phoenix Pharos cards today, and as a bonus, use the promo code MetaNerd to get an amazing 5% discount. And with that being said, let's get on with the video. Greetings YouTube, welcome back to the MetaNerd channel. I am Marcus, bringing you another video for Cardfight Vanguard Willdress. In this video, we'll be going through none other than sort of the main antagonist for, you know, second season of Willdress, Drajeweled Masques, which I am actually surprised that he joined the dark side. Who would have thought? So Drajeweled Masques is largely still the same, but there's a very, you know, like sort of a nerf as well as a buff, depends on how you see it. It's mostly a nerf in my opinion, but then again, once I go through some of the thoughts that I have after, you know, reading this Drajeweled Masques card skill, maybe you would understand where I'm coming from. Nevertheless, let's take a look at Drajeweled Masques in DBT10. First and foremost, of course, is going to be Karmic Demonic Jewel Dragon Drajeweled Masques. Active Vanguard once per turn. Cost: remove a card with Drajeweled in its different card name from this unit from your hand, soul, or drop. Choose 2 cards from your drop, put them into your soul, and this unit gets critical +1 until the end of turn. Second skill, Auto Vanguard Circle. When this unit attacks the Vanguard, cost Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 4 cards with different grade. Choose 2 of your opponent's rearguard, retire them, choose 1 of your opponent's Vanguard, and increase or decrease its power to 1 until the end of turn. The big difference between this mass unit and the OG Drajeweled is basically the critical. The critical here plays a really huge role in terms of whether or not the opponent wants to guard your center column. You will need to remove either the OG Drajeweled or the TD Drajeweled if for some reason you are playing it in this deck in order to get the crit. Although you do get the 2 cards from the drop to soul, the +1 critical here is the big thing here. If you do not have like the OG Drajeweled in either your hand, soul, or drop, you don't get the critical, which is actually a major trade-off, putting 2 cards from drop to soul as well as the 2 retire. The critical consistency does basically guarantees you on the first and second time you go into the mass, because the first time you activate that skill, you definitely have the OG Drajeweled in your soul, so it's not that bad. The second time could more or less guarantee due to the amount of cards you soul charge and draw. So long as you don't, you know, have very bad RNG, then yeah, you don't get the crit. However, the big thing here is when you go first with a Drajeweled deck, normally you don't get the crit because the opponent is not grade 3. However, if you straight go into Drajeweled Masques, you definitely will get the crit, which is like, you know, a very huge difference in terms of pressure, because going first with Drajeweled actually sucked quite a bit because most of your stuff is locked behind needing the opponent's Vanguard to be at grade 3. Only then you're able to activate skills. But if you go straight into Drajeweled Masques on the 3rd turn while going first, you will get the crit, which is quite pressuring, to be honest. And with cards like Empusa that doesn't really need the opponent to be at grade 3 to restand, it actually is quite scary. But of course you don't get the personnel right, but still pressure, loads of pressure. Returning cards from the drop is basically what Falkit Performer has been doing for this deck. It would means that you might not need to run a lot of Falkit Performer, but the problem here is that during the early game where you need to set up, Falkit Performer is still quite important because you still need the grade 3 in the soul in order to, you know, soul blast 4 different grades to activate the skill. So a lot of testing will be needed in order for you to, you know, gauge how important Falkit Performer is. I mean, there's a lot of cards within Drajeweled right now that can be played, but whether or not they are good, it's still up for debate because it's still quite early and we don't really have like a full list of card support out yet for me to test. The reducing power to 1 is largely still the same, but then again, it does cause an extra counterblast, as if the current Drajeweled without the mass doesn't cost enough counterblast. They gave it another counterblast on the mass unit, so it's going to cost you a lot of resources because each and every stuff costs 1 counterblast. The OG Drajeweled costs 1 counterblast, Rock Guru costs 1 counterblast, this guy costs 1 counterblast, and who knows what else costs 1 more counterblast. So yes, we do get a counter charger for Drajeweled, but then again, this 1 counterblast is gonna hurt Drajeweled quite significantly, if you ask me. The bar control is very nice, but it doesn't really remove the interceptors if you have restanders, because due to how awkward the timing of your restanders are, you need to attack with your restander first, only then they're able to restand, which will actually kind of encourages the opponent to intercept their front row away if of course they have interceptor in the front row. It's quite good, but it doesn't really cripple the opponents quite as much as I like it to be, but still board control is definitely good. But of course some of the meta decks doesn't really care if you retire their stuff, so there's that. One last thing is that the OG Drajeweled could still prove useful due to the fact that the OG Drajeweled doesn't cost you counterblast. You only need 4 different grades in the soul and you're able to activate the skill. So in the scenario where you run out of counterblast and if you draw into the OG Drajeweled, it's best you ride it on top of Drajeweled Masques. At this point, I don't really know how we're gonna, balance out the card ratios, because you have this unit to run, you have the mass order card to run, you have the OG Drajeweled to run, and you have a lot of stuff that basically needs to go inside this deck in order for this deck to function. It's gonna be quite challenging. Regardless of how negative I can get with this card, it's a very deadly card. It's a good card, don't get me wrong. I'm just coming from a perspective of, how much resources I'm currently using, how consistent the skills will be. So I could get quite negative, but then again, it is a very good upgrade to Drajeweled. But then again, not necessarily going to be a consistent one. With that being said, let's take a look at what the other support cards that Drajeweled actually gets. It's not a lot, but it's actually enough for Drajeweled to really power it out in a sense. Next, we have Cranium Burner, a grade 2. Auto Rigor Circle. When this unit attacks, if you have a Vanguard with Drajeweled in its card name, 2k power until the end of that battle. At the end of that battle, if you Soul Blast 4 or more cards at the same time for the cost of your Vanguard's ability this turn, retire this unit and countercharge 1. With the amount of counterblast that Drajeweled is already consuming, even without putting in the mass unit, this card is a godsend. He himself is a 12k attacker that gives countercharger on retiring while retiring himself. I mean, the retire part doesn't really matter because you have stuff like Empuza to basically recycle Cranium Burner from the drop to the soul, and then from the soul to the hand, which will then keep on recycle, keep on countercharging every single turn. If you have 2 of this guy in the front row, it means that your first turn of activating Drajeweled is basically free of counterblast, because you countercharge not once but twice, which is very nice. This card does kind of solve the counterblast usage, but then again, more testing will be needed in order to test how good this card is. But based on this card alone, without running the mass unit, is a really good card. At this point in time, there are cards right now in my Drajeweled deck that could be replaced with this guy here. Yeah, this guy is definitely a stapler for Drajeweled. However, if of course you will want the counter charge, it will mean that you will only be attacking for 4 times, because the other column might be in restander or not. At the minimum, you're still gonna attack for 3 times if you want a counter charge. You will definitely not be attacking for 5 times if you have this guy in the front row, because he doesn't restand or anything. He just gives you counter charge, which in itself is really good already. Very nice. Moving on, we have Steam Launcher Yasmah. Auto Rigor Circle. When your Karmic Demonic Jewel Dragon Drajeweled Masques is placed on Vanguard Circle, put this unit into your soul and draw a card. So this card is kind of like a weird one because it's an early aggression unit. I mean, you can just call it out in the early game to attack. Even if the opponent wants to attack it, just let it go. It doesn't really do a lot until you ride into the mass unit, which basically tells you that this card is not really as great as it seems, because he needs to potentially wait until the 4th turn or the third turn, depending if you go first or second, in order to put himself to soul to draw 1. It does helps you fuel the cost requirement for Drajeweled because it's a grade 1 to the soul, which means that you can focus on getting the other grades to the soul, which is definitely nice. But then again, so far grade 1s has not been the limiting factor of Drajeweled. The grade 3s are the limiting factors for Drajeweled. Is it worth it to remove some of your key pieces for this card? I don't think so, but still, Drajeweled support is a Drajeweled support. Next up, we have Awkward Ravager. Continuous, this card cannot be ridden. Second skill, auto Ravager Circle. If you did not soul blast 3 or more cards at the same time for the cost of your card's ability this turn, this unit cannot attack nor boost. I mean, it's a 15k grade 1, which of course definitely will have the restriction. At the moment, this card is like a really weird grade 1 that may work with Drajeweled or maybe no, depends on how you build the deck. But then again, this is basically like a very huge booster or beat stick. He's a 15k grade 1. Very nice. But then again, why would you want to sacrifice your key pieces for this card? That's still the main question. I mean, not necessarily this card must be run with Drajeweled, but then again, Drajeweled does have the Soul Blast 4, which will definitely meet this card's requirement. Gunnaram is also another card that could help meet this card's requirement. If you want to run Awkward Ravager, you will need to run Gunnaram, which not really that great, to be honest. I mean, the name does speaks for itself. This card is very awkward. Basically a depth card if you can't fulfill the requirement. Next up, we have Brawlfeld Hydra. Auto when this unit is placed on Ravager Circle, if you have 3 or more Dragontree on Ravager Circle, cost Counterblast 1, choose a grade 3 or less from your soul and call it to Ravager Circle. Okay, so this card is quite nice in a sense because it does help you secure call anything from the soul, which is surprisingly really good for 1 counterblast. Anything that was put to the soul can be reused thanks to this card. The only problem here is that you will need to have 3 or more Dragontree marker, which is considering the fact that most of your Dragontree units that helps you generate the Dragontree marker does need to cost you 1 counterblast. Yeah, this card is more so for the grade 10 than the average deck. It's a really nice effect for grade 10, but for the others, not really that much. Although it could be interesting to see what people come up with in order to make use of this card. But you know, this is a common. You don't really pay too much attention to this card anyway. So moving on. Lastly, we have Spooky Chirpy. Auto Ravager Circle. When this unit boosts, if this unit is on a Ravager Circle with a Dragontree marker, soul charge 1, and this unit gets 5k power until the end of that battle. This is basically a 18k booster on a Dragontree marker, since one of the requirements for him to activate the skill is needing him to be on the Dragontree marker. The Dragontree marker will definitely give the extra 5k. So yeah, makes sense that this guy is a 18k booster. Soul resources is definitely good for decks that needs a lot of soul. Considering that this card does not cost you any resources, it doesn't cost you counterblast, it doesn't cost you soul blast, and since the grade 10 does not have a soul upon the moment they ride the grade 10, this card can be good for providing that extra soul resources, which Gryphogila can take advantage of. This is a very nice card to be run and constantly giving soul to Gryphogila. Very nice. I mean, the other decks can run this, but still, the other decks do have their own stuff to run, unlike Gryphogila, where the support is kind of generic, where anything goes. So yeah, very nice card for Gryphogila. I mean, you could still run this in Drajeweled, but why? And that is all for this video. Do let me know down in the comment section of what do you think of Drajeweled Masques. For me, I am like very doubtful on how consistent this deck is due to how many pieces you need to run inside the deck, as well as some of the costs as well as nerf that Drajeweled Masques actually gets. It's still probably going to be strong, but whether or not this deck can go up against the meta decks, that is still debatable. Do like and subscribe if you like this video, and of course during the bell notification icon so that you don't miss a video I upload. With that being said, I'll see you all on the field.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, go.